join as we go.
Okay, sure. Sounds good. Okay, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for making it today in this fine evening to the fourth session of the Keeping It Simple series. So just to give a little context as to why we're doing this and what the Keeping It Simple series is all about. So we thought that we can have a few sessions where we take complex topics or like very engaging topics in Web3 and kind of break it down in a way that's very easy for anyone to follow along and in a way that anyone can be a part of this conversation. So just as a quick recap, we had Clifton Lee coming in and giving us a little rundown on Web3 governance. We had Lisa from Economics Design talking about tokenomics, and we had most recently a lovely session on maximum extractable value by BVM. But today's session is all about venture building. So that's kind of going to be the main focus. And we are really lucky to be joined by two amazing individuals who, taking the time off to come talk to all of us and share their expertise and insight. So yeah, thank you so much, Josh and Elroy, for making it here today. So maybe we can start off with a quick round of introductions, just to go around the table and kind of talk about who we are and what we're doing in the space. So Elroy, do you maybe want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you for that. My name is Elroy. I'm a co-founder, CEO of Arc. Arc is basically a Web3 collective where we have a very strong assumption that social communities with alignment and purpose that ultimately creates a high capacity of collective action, like what Balaji mentioned in the network state theory. We personally feel that these type of communities would be the next generation investment and project incubation powerhouse. In short, I would say that we are building the YC or hope to build the YC of Web3.
Yeah, thanks for that. Josh?
Thanks, mate. So yeah, I'm Joshua. So essentially I work for Menyala Studios venture builder with regards to Web3 as well as AI capabilities as well. So we incubate startups for Temasek globally, Singapore, US, wherever.
Nice. So we have the perfect people, to talk about, Web3 venture building today. And both projects have a really strong, presence in Asia and specifically APAC. And that's also part of, why we're doing the series, at a very APAC friendly time, because we wanted to be more inclusive of the Asian community. And I think these speakers are perfect for that and perfect for that mission of ours in this series. So maybe just to before we start off, I can just give a quick rundown as to how we're going to do this. So it's going to be a very casual conversation. I think that's how, that's the main format of this session. So it's going to be like a, fireside panel discussion, and so for about 40 minutes, we have a couple of pre-planned questions which we can, talk about and kind of build the conversation on the basis of. And for the last 20 minutes, we can maybe open it up for general Q&A, so the audience can also interact and kind of pick your brains a little. So how does that sound? Should we maybe just jump right into it then?
Sounds good.
Yep, sounds great.
Awesome. So I guess we can first start off by share by you all sharing your insights on a very fundamental question, that is, how can we effectively leverage community and ecosystem dynamics, to basically drive growth and build sustainably in a Web3 venture. I think there's a lot to unpack there, but I think it's a good place for us to start.
Yeah. I guess maybe I'll take this since community-based question, right, Joshua? Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to thread the answer a little bit back to Arc, right? I think the answer actually is I think most projects in the space need this as well. So yeah. So at Arc, we practice community-led growth over product-led growth. That means that we actually practice community market fit over product market fit. So yes, it's a little weird that, especially talking to, especially when I talk to Web2 founders and I tell them that I'm actually going more for community market fit. Sometimes, actually, most of the times, I'm ignoring product market fit because of the nature of the product that we are, which is a community-first Web3 social product. However, in my opinion, all, if not most projects should practice this because in Web3, very different from Web2. In Web3, your products are often intertwined immediately with your product. Your community is often intertwined immediately with your product. So at Arc, we place a lot of focus on community versus entirely on product. We chase community market fit, like what I mentioned just now, not product market fit. In turn, if you do this right and you implement certain incentivization models, you will get community-led growth versus product-led growth, which is, to me, the holy grail of a complete product in the Web3 space. I feel that this is crucial to have for all projects in the space because attention is what fuels all projects. So doing all this means that you're actually progressing away from a linear funnel, progressing to a non-linear funnel from a linear funnel. So what does that mean is that, in a linear funnel, you open your funnel at the top, you push your users down the funnel until they ultimately buy a product from you and their attention seeps away. In Web3, we all know that this cannot be the case, right? Especially if you have a digital asset, whether it's an NFT that's listed on a marketplace or whether you have a token that's listed on a SEX or a DEX. I feel that if you do this right, and you actually allow your members to not have their attention seeped away. So then what I described as a linear funnel, right? In a non-linear funnel, you actually open your funnel at the top, you push your members down the funnel, but you cannot let them go to the end of the funnel and let their attention seep away. So I guess now the question right now is, how do you actually retain your members in the middle of the funnel? My answer and our answer is that we must create a community experience that's so compelling, right? That gives them community market fit, that I can just drop any product on the site right now and they just buy because their attention is not seeping away. A product could be an investment product. It could be incubating a project. It could be getting our members to collectively do a project. It could be, hey, go to Da Nang for Arcs Retreat. So they all just buy. So if this is done right, ultimately your new community or the community that you have built becomes an extension of your core team, who not only end up marketing your product for you, they do work for you, which I guess in result creates a sustainable business that grows and lasts longer. I think certain prevalent examples in the space right now is Monat, where they employ a very strong community approach in their go-to-market. I personally believe that most chains are the same, or if roll-ups are really the same, and what makes them better is community and branding, as well as given the state of crypto that we're in right now. So yeah, in summary, I guess my answer is community-led is needed to a good degree. Idealistic to many perhaps, but I think it's something especially needed, and it's so possible in this space where ownership and also new models of incentivization that the tech brings, that the blockchain brings, are also intertwined. Yeah, sorry, I went a bit off tangent there, but I hope that answers the question.
No, that's super interesting. So as someone in the comments rightly pointed out, I think it's really fascinating to think about this idea of community market fit and sort of giving that equal, if not higher priority than just product market fit. And I found something that you said towards the end very interesting, where you mentioned that every roll up is the same, every L1 chain is the same, and it's all about how do you build a strong and compelling community around the L1. And I guess this kind of leads to my next question as to how do you think cross-chain interoperability really changes the way we think about Web3 communities? Because normally when we what we notice when we look at crypto Twitter, or when we go to these large conferences like ETH is that we find that communities tend to be kind of siloed away, in the sense that you have Solana has a great and robust community, Ethereum has a great and robust community, but then they're kind of like individual and they're kind of like siloed off and quite separate in nature. But with advances in cross-chain interoperability, like how do you think that this landscape is going to change, and how do you think the wider community is kind of going to engage with each other?
Very interesting question. Yeah, but I made a tweet recently. It goes along the lines of, there's a new value trickle for NFT communities, NFT collections, or NFT projects that's relying on brand value, right? Which is that if your NFT collection, like Pudgy or Matlets right now, have a lot of brand value, they are getting ecosystem value trickle, not just from Solana, not just from ETH, but from other chains as well. So I think the most notable example is Matlets and Pudgy, right? Getting a Dimension Cosmos airdrops, or all form of other chain airdrops. I think the interoperability only brings would bring new liquidity. I feel. I think at the current juncture, in terms of mindshare and everything, I feel that a chain NFT collection or NFT doesn't have, or a community doesn't have to be interoperable. They don't have to be wrapped and sent to other chains. Yeah. One good example, I think, is Nounstyle. If Nounstyle didn't face the problems that they're having today, I'm pretty sure they will be the dominant NFT of ETH, but also other chains as well. I'm pretty sure that just because of the nature of the community, the brand value, the type of members that they have, the community health of the community, I'm pretty sure that Nouns, if they still had big brand value right now, they would be getting value trickle from other ecosystems and not just ETH. I think for them, they don't even need to wrap their Nouns to actually wrap their Nouns and port over to another chain. I feel that they can just do whatever they're doing right now, continue doing public goods on, let's just say, Solana as well. With their brand value and they're doing good in Solana ecosystem, let's just say creating public goods projects. Why won't projects from Solana actually value trickle projects to them? I think the word interoperability should be taken with a grain of salt. I think for me right now, this current juncture is more liquidity focus.
Right. So I guess the TLDR is, cross-chain interoperability. The main thing that it does is just provide liquidity, and if your project has strong brand value, it doesn't matter which chain you're on, and you attract the right users.
Yes. However, I maybe just because I haven't really pondered about this question deep enough, right? But just that idea of composability across different blockchains. I know that composability is something that will bring true innovation that we've never been before. The idea that smart contract and smart contract can interact with one another, create more value. It really excites me to think about what happens if a smart contract on one chain can interact with another smart contract in another chain that actually creates value as well. So yeah, I hope that Joshua has something to say here, but this is something that I now know I need to ponder more about. Yeah. Sorry to throw you under the bus. Sure.
Thanks, Elroy. Actually, I don't have much to say to be fair. I think you covered it really well. It's like a good reflection point. But I actually like what you brought about community market fit. And I think what Web3 brought, besides a lot of liquidity and money in the space, is a huge perspective change, like what Elroy was touching on, where essentially we're starting to see, in your question earlier, you also separated community and ecosystems, but I think we're starting to see the transition one the same. I think to your point, when we start to talk about even interoperability, I think it's the conversation more so about, or less so about, like just pure technical ecosystems merging, but about how different people with different opinions, different mindsets come together to build something unique, right? And then different narrative, we spin it differently about how do we start to get mass adoption over time, right? Whether there are two people coming over, or whether Web3 becomes invisible, like what we see with Reddit, for example. So I think the progression of what we can expect to see over time, like what Elroy was touching on earlier, is that we start to see a lot more emergence of communities as a brand, right? To his point, as well as that, as a result of that, creating stronger loyalty and ownership towards it, right? Loyalty in the sense was what I was touching about here, like they would build and sacrifice their time, effort, and money to build the brand. and ownership where really that, we live in a generation now where I would say it's a bit like plastic in the sense where like we're very superficial, and finding that unique identity is a lot more challenging. And physically we can look like each other, but association to people, that digital transformation of relationships is where we essentially the transition, right? Where we can own the same like NFT looks similar, but the fact that we belong to a community, right, and we belong to a few different communities, and how those communities contribute to who we are. I think the emergence of that psychological perspective is what we're starting to see more in the space, which is where I see a lot more value come, especially when we talk about like releasing new products or finding new ways to engage people from a marketing perspective. But I think that's just the early thoughts. It is a very well worded question to Elroy's point, so a lot more thoughts has to be put into that. Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess the main point to sort of like take away there is that if you build a robust community and allow people to have their identity not just as an individual, but rather as part of something bigger than that, and actually contribute to that, there's actually going to put in time and effort to building the brand and growing the community. And I think that's super interesting, and it's also a good segue into the next question that I sort of wanted to ask you both, which is we often notice that when it comes to Web3 projects, the main fundamental users, or rather the main initial community is kind of almost exclusively consisting of people who are very ethos aligned, and they're very aligned to the ideologies that Web3 is all about, which is why they're here. Take Farcaster for example. So like it's like everyone's just calling it crypto Twitter for now, because the people who use it really identify the need for Farcaster over its Web2 counterparts. So I guess my question here is, how do you think projects can kind of like break that initial barrier and get a wider reach amongst people who are not already onboarded into Web3, and like how does it really create like a strong user base that just goes beyond its identity of being a Web3 project?
Yeah, I think building in line with the ethos of space is very important, and this is something I've been trying to also improve on internally at ARC. I hope for everyone to be extremely Web3 inclined, keeping on top of trends, narratives, obviously ethos of the space. Funny thing is that I have a friend who hired a head of degen whose only role is to make sure that everyone on the team gets more Web3 inclined. So that includes checking up on their screen time on Twitter versus their screen time on other social media platforms. Also, I guess like how the main thing is like, how can you build the correct product for the existing participants in the space when you don't exactly understand their needs and motivations? I mean, we always thought that Web3 is user-centric. Building Web3 is user-centric versus platform-centric. I think there's a lot to unpack there. If people don't understand the ethos of space, I don't think they can even answer the question. Let's just say, even looking at like a simple example would be most accomplished Web2 founders who enter space, someone who picks up crypto theoretically because they're smart, right? And they haven't gotten their hands dirty yet. They get crypto theoretically quick because I think the overarching thesis of crypto or the blockchain appeals to most people in the world, what a Cypress bit of press. Whether it's
I wanted to ask you about that. So he doesn't want to give too much away, and I wonder if that was because you told him not to, or
I think she's just unmuted.
So yeah.
Okay, muted her. Please proceed.
By the way, can I extend the question by Shyam to the crypto native projects? Like you mentioned Monet, for example, as one of the L1s, which a higher community reach. And when I think about how a project can achieve that, the only two things that comes to my mind is that employing well-known crypto figures, Web3 names to the project, and secondly, paid promotion by these big influencers, so on and so forth. What else do you think can be done to enhance the community participation, making it more Web3 native, so on and so forth? As you mentioned, like presumably most of the L1s are similar. But today, I'm mostly seeing Berachain all over the Twitter, and they seem to have a wider community with a lot of active participation, so on and so forth. How a project can achieve that, apart from employing well-known Web3 figures and doing paid promotion by well-known influencers?
That's a very good question, and actually, I think I can answer this quite well. So in case people don't know, Arc, like the project that I'm founder of, is a Web3 collective. Our community has a 25% active monthly contributors. We are made up of the top builders and investors in the entire Asian Web3 space. How do we do this, right? It entails doing things that don't scale. If you want to build a real community, it entails doing things that don't scale because you need to actually manifest, create a lot of relationships, bonds, connections between your members. If you don't do that, you're actually building an audience because it's all siloed, right? It's also when you want to build a real community as well, it entails you to also manifest a very strong brand-to-member bond. An example of doing things that don't scale there is the early stage of Arc. I personally speak to every member one-on-one. To today, my core team, my community team, which is only 4 people, they have to speak to every member one-on-one. Today, I actually spoke to 4 members, 5 collectively, actually, 2 came down as a group, one-on-one. It involves doing things that don't scale, that you actually build a community. I think this Monad example that you brought up and whatever I brought up earlier is very interesting, right? I made a tweet recently as well, it's a few days ago, right? It was like Loomdart making a tweet saying that communities are not going to launch a blockchain. Communities are going to incubate and help jumpstart, solve the cold start problem of a blockchain. When I saw that tweet, right, I tried it back to what I'm doing at Arc internally. That's some things that we can announce. I tried it back to certain groups that are building blockchains as a small collective. I imagine a scenario, right? And I know that this will be the matter coming soon, is that what happens when communities actually group up to actually build a blockchain together, or you don't even need to be a blockchain. It can be a product like a marketplace. It could be like a product like a wallet. Treading back to the previous question before, right? What happens when interoperability becomes more mature? I yearn for a future where communities from different blockchains, different ecosystems will come up with a multi-chain product. So yes, just a summary, right? Communities entail you, and it requires you to do things that don't scale. For Monad itself, they have been planning this for a long while with the private Telegram groups, right? Doing a purge and everything. So they are doing things that don't scale. I hope that answers part of the question.
Yeah, but this brings me to my second question. Like, all the things you're saying resonates with me a lot. For example, I'm a part of a few NFT communities, and I'm just sticking with the teams that listen to my voice, like make me feel that I'm heard. But at the same time, I think there should be a tangible incentivization plan or mechanism. For example, today, LSDFI, LRT projects are using these points. Like everywhere, they're talking about points and they are creating a wider community. What else do you think can be used as an incentivization mechanism for Web3 projects to create community loyalty, like a wider community, so on and so forth?
Good question, man. I'm going to try this back to Arc as well. At Arc, we've defined what does value mean to our members, right? So value mean to our members because our members are growth-minded individuals, right? So obviously, whatever you mentioned in terms of points, I see that as monetary value, token incentivization down the line. But value can also be broken down into extrinsic and intrinsic. For monetary value, falls under extrinsic, but extrinsic value for Arc also don't just mean money alone, right? It means real world perks. So for example, right now I'm negotiating for Arc that Arc members do not need to queue up at certain airports, immigrations in the world. I think we'll be the first community in the entire world to do that. That's a strong value, right? That's a strong value that money cannot buy. If you're a member of Arc, we have onboarded 140 hotels in the world. We have our members are members of various private member clubs in the world. All these are certain incentivizations that the space don't really think about because it's all, especially for Ethereum Foundation, it's very crypto native. So we're not talking merely or purely about token incentivization. When Arc actually does launch a token, to me, token incentivization would not be the end of it all. I feel that if you actually just only rely on token incentivization to actually coordinate your members towards a common goal, whatever the shared purpose or the goal of the community is, I think that will sway motivations. The reason why I say this is because I used to be part of a mega church, right? I was an usher boy for 2 years. This church had thousands, tens of thousands of members. They have hundreds of cell groups, which I liken to sub-DAOs. They have the core team on top, which is the leadership team of the church. The core team would drive certain instructions to the hundreds of different cell group leaders who actually manage the different sub-DAOs. I was working for this church for 2 years. I was living socially with this church and my cell groups for 2 years. And I would often question myself, if City Harvest, if the church actually introduced a token, would coordination be better or motivations be swayed? Everything worked like the perfect DAO structure. I actually think that I caught the first half of the DAO governance panel the last time, and I think there was a slide that actually mentioned that a DAO doesn't even require tokens. I think one thing that I'm very, very comfortable, actually very contented with ARC right now is that we have already become a DAO without being a DAO, right? We have created a foundation of the DAO where our members contribute, they participate, and they are coordinated towards our shared purpose on top, which is drilled into them regularly. And our shared purpose is that we want to push the Web3 space in Asia forward via collective value creation. So to me, I guess to summarize, I don't think a tokens incentivization should be the main incentivization, especially if your community has a certain shared purpose. It may just sway motivations. I think down the line, Web3 is not only ownership for me, it's about collaboration, it's about incentivization. Purely just because that Web3 brings different incentive models that Web2 doesn't have. But I don't think that token incentivization may be the correct incentivization purely down the line. Right now, it probably is. But yeah, I don't think that incentivization, in short, I don't think that incentivization should be monetary completely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% right. But we have to accept the fact that you are kind of talking from a position of strength. You invaded a lot of crazy KPIs. You have so many developers now. You are at a point that it's a lot more easier for you to do a partnership, to persuade the bigger guys, the bigger players into the game. I'm more curious about, like, for the new projects that are just searching for community market fit or product market fit with fewer community members, less community participation. Like, do you have any suggestions for them to use the incentivization mechanisms properly, both external and internal? I mean, the extrinsic and intrinsic motivation.
Yeah. Good question. One thing I have to disclaimer, right? ARC didn't have it easy. We were flooded to hell when we started. People thought that we were normies because we employed a very Web 2.5 approach to building a community, to building a Web3 product. Just the idea that we actually implemented curation, we got flooded really big for that. Elroy, I thought you were crypto native. Web3 is supposed to be open and permissionless. I guess me being in space for 7 years, understand that, okay, that's an ideal narrative, just like democracy, or if you're on the other end of the spectrum, communism, authoritarian is your ideal narrative. I feel that the answer always lies in the middle. For new communities coming out, I feel that don't put so much focus on your token and DAO coordination. Define what your members' needs, wants, and motivations are, just like how any Web2 founder would create a product. Figure out what does value mean to your members first, according to their needs, their wants, their motivations, their persona. Deliver that value first. If you keep delivering that value versus just token incentivization, I don't think that you really need tokens. Token incentivization you would have the liberty of not even considering tokens in the short term or the midterm. I give a very good example. I was listening to the Seed Club podcast where the DAO, the Boys Club founders, the DAO, were actually talking. So Seed Club is supposedly the Y Combinator of Web3. They actually focus on very tokenized communities. So they're building it exactly to the extreme end of decentralization. So during that podcast, which was aired last year, the founder of Boys Club actually said one thing that I just mentioned, which is that they all make the same mistake of putting coordination and the DAO in front. Right now, every DAO has changed the strategy to putting what does value mean to their members first and keep delivering value to their members. Imagine if you put so much focus on your token itself and coordination there, that becomes a centric force or a centric feature of your entire product. When the bear market hits, right? If you launch a community, if you have a community and you launch a social token, a token, your token ultimately gets classified as a social token, just like FWB DAO. Social tokens are the first to fall in the bear. It falls the hardest in the bear because it doesn't have the moon boy element, right? But if you put value first, right now, there's multiple value streams as to why a holder still wants to be part of your community in the bear. So I think for us, we have to think long-term versus short-term. Token incentivization is great, but there's a whole range of problems or issues that come with introducing a token too early. And I think this is well referenced by most of the DAOs, right? That let's just say even fingerprint DAO, Squiggles DAO, they change from ERC20 token gating to NFT gated, just like Arc. So yeah, in short, value in front, coordination and DAO at the back.
What was the core value that you put before in your early journey, like when Arc started? What was the core value for you when you started?
Connections. Yeah, connections, and up to today, connections. You can ask any member of Arc. Connections is probably the main thing that they crave. So very intrinsic, a little more intrinsic than extrinsic. Actually, still extrinsic, I guess. But the connections, yeah. If you actually go on Twitter today, you actually search a hash Arc. Members are all, because our main window is actually closing this month, end of the month. Members are all posting about Arc today, and you can see most of their core value that they get from Arc is connections.
Awesome. Thank you, Elroy. Sorry for hijacking Shyam.
No worries.
No, not at all. I think these were some really, really insightful questions, and I think this was great. And we really dived in a lot into building communities and sort of what are the best practices that we can think about while doing this. But I guess while building a Web3 venture, it is, while you're building this community, it's also important that you build a product that this community actually accepts and is able to resonate with. So that kind of leads me to the next sort of focus, which is what are the best practices that Web3 founders can actually adopt to test out product market fit while they're building their own communities and while it's going organic. Josh, do you want to maybe give us a couple of insights from your experience and your expertise on this?
So the question again is, what is the best way for Web3 founders to get product market fit? Is that a question?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So okay, I think Elroy were really good on this, just not to pass the baton now. So, but essentially, I think for Web3 founders, from what we see from the venture studio side and for some of the investments that we see as well, a lot of it is really about a lot of what Elroy shared earlier, going to where the user is. I think a lot of people make the mistake about, hey, like trying to show something shiny and then say, hey, come to me. But I really like what Arc is doing, where where they're going to where the user is, understanding the user where they're at, and to Elroy's point, driving value directly to them, right? And so I think the best way to really get that PMF, right, is to really go to the things, right? Actually go to the user, talk to them, right? I think we have a few projects that are launching, and essentially, what they did was they flew to Denver, other conferences. They have the hard conversations on a one-to-one level with every single user to actually understand, how they think, and to Elroy's point earlier, how do they see value? And I think from there, it's a lot easier to, discern for yourself, right? What are some things from your own hypothesis and assumptions that are correct? What are some of those that are false? And you might be even very shocked to find things that you weren't even aware of, right? So I think, again, the best way in summary is just to go talk to users directly, one-on-one, and to Elroy's point earlier, have those hard conversations.
I guess I can add a little bit more to that. I love that Josh says that go to where the user is. So this is currently something that already happening for us, where our members are actually coming to me. So for example, one of my members actually want to build a multi-chain wallet. Very interesting product. And he actually wants to use Arc to test the product, to be early adopters of the product. Therefore, he can keep refining his product. Like what I mentioned just now, the end state of a thriving community is that your community becomes an extension of your core team. And what is the first use case of this new core team that you're going to be building? I feel that the best use case of a community is actually to do product testing, to be early adopters of a product. So Joshua says, go to where the user is. I guess to add on to that is that go to where the communities are, use them to adopt. So basically it's Josh's answer by doing it on scale with communities, like what Arc members are doing right now with the Arc community.
So if I kind of like try and please correct me and if I'm wrong and sort of summarizing basically what we've spoken about so far. But the main idea is that once you get your community right, and once you have a bunch of people in the room who are well aligned with your value of the brand that you're building, the next step is whatever product you have, take it to them. And since you already have this like robust community, it becomes like a lot easier to get the right signals from them and sort of understand what is important to them and kind of like use that to direct the real product that you're building. And I think this is
I think I can add in a reference from Li Jin, who is like the co-founder of Variant Fund XA16Z. I think she's like the mother of the passion economy, a creator economy, one of the biggest proponent of the creator economy as well. She said that you can actually build a community, Web3 social product in 3 ways. Obviously, a protocol first, like that's. Then you have a debt base first, let's just say like FriendTech. And then there's the last way where you actually build community first, just like Arc. She goes on to say that this community is going to go on to build products, right? Products that the community want. And ideally, these community, the members should also be the early adopters and the testers of the product. Ultimately, this should be revenue generating for the community, right? So it's like a whole process of creating a product from ideation, there's due diligence done with the community. When the product's being created, the community becomes the early adopters and keep refining the product through a very well-designed feedback loop. Then the product launches and creates revenue for the community. So I think there's a very nice flywheel down there, especially if you give ownership to your members in terms of that product itself.
So I think throughout this conversation we've spoken a lot about the perspective of founders and also like touched upon the perspective of users actually interact with this with the brands that you build, the products that you build. So maybe one interesting sort of added perspective that we can kind of talk about is from the investor's point of view. So from an investor's point of view, like how do you think VCs actually approach things like risk management and due diligence when investing in Web3 ventures, especially when you consider the uncertainty and the volatility of the space? So yeah, just curious as to what your 2 cents are on that note.
I think this is Joshua's forte. I wouldn't reference historicals, but yeah, definitely the forte of the institution that he works at.
Yeah, no comment. Web3 is interesting, right? Because it's emerging, and I think honestly we're still relatively early. And with any early investment, like I mean, if you at late stage investments, you always talk about due diligence of like financials and comms, but I think at this stage, we're all big in terms of founder and founding team, right? And so when you take a look at Arc, for example, right, you have a fantastic founder like Elroy, and you have the whole team from like Declan to Keen to Gabe. And I think the whole team and their background and the commitment they put in, that gives a lot of confidence. I think in the same way for investors, right? I mean, especially for really early pre-seed angel seed investments, a lot of it is evaluating the team and their understanding of the problem statement and their understanding of what they aim to achieve and the vision they have, and understanding as well as that how, not just their background, but the kind of conviction and steps they want to take to achieve that. I think a lot of that is the assessment that's being performed. And I would say that when we evaluate the investments, a lot of it is a journey we walk through with the different companies to actually understand, like what is the journey they've taken so far when they first conceptualized all the way to where they are. And again, like what is the help they need to go all the way to the next step. So a lot of that is a lot more qualitative. I feel like people will expect like, let's do like a really crazy fin model and draw like a 5-year projection and have a nice IRR and all of that. But the reality is that when we do this kind of financial projections at a very early stage, it ends up more prohibitive than enabling, because the reality is that it's like asking me, like, will Bitcoin go up tomorrow? You can have some TA, but the reality is that you won't know. But I think a lot of the bets we place, especially for investments for early stage, is more in people. And I think looking at the investments we've done so far, and I mean, taking away from the investments that we've done, but also looking at just Arc, for example, like look at Elroy, looking at the whole team, it's a really great team that's been a fantastic product. I think the confidence that the ARC members have in Elroy is a testament to the founding team, which will give any investor confidence in investing in them. So it's time for us to reevaluate, whether it's a new AI tool or a new dip-in tool in Web3. A lot of it's understanding the founder, understanding the founding team, confidence they have, the problem statement, and essentially how they plan to take the next steps to achieve the next milestone. Yeah, understanding, whether this is a team worth investing in. That's how I will approach it. Yeah.
I think this is super interesting that there is a sort of recurrent theme here that no matter from what perspective you look at things, like finally everything boils down to the people. So from the investors' perspective, it's the people that are building the product, and from the builder's perspective, it's the people who are using the product and sort of like engaging with the brand. So I think that's a very cool sort of like takeaway that we can get
just
from.
to add on that statement as well, if you think about it, like, because look, like you can have nice plans and you can have a great product, but Elroy can testify to this, that great products change over time. And especially in the fast-moving space like Web3, right? Whether it's the meta or whether it's just expectations, they adapt, right? And if you just know how to, build a boxed product that looks great, you're not going to be able to survive, right? But a great founding team with conviction that has very high synergy, is able to work seamlessly with each other and able to back each other even through such high stress times, is something you can bet on, because you would know that even if they have product wrong, right, they're able to pivot and adapt quickly, which is something that is the most challenging to evaluate when we are looking at investments, but I think that's one of the most key as well.
So and I guess this is something that is very hard to really attach numbers to, right? Because it's not something that you can quantify in a financial model or capture in mathematics. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. So a lot of the DD we perform is a lot more on people. It's on just the financials to that degree.
Oh, that's great. So I want to give some time, for other audiences to kind of ask their questions and have a Q&A session. But before that, maybe we can just end off with having both of you give your opinions on how both of y'all envision, the future evolving, around Web3 building, and what do you think are the emerging trends that you find most exciting and impactful, and how do you think the space is sort of like going to change to the future? Just a quick rundown. Yeah.
Maybe I can start first. On the building side, I feel that I think I mentioned this just now already, that communities are going to cross collaborate, whether on their own ecosystems or multi-chain, and they're going to be creating the products that people want. Communities are going to do so because their own communities would ultimately also, like what we mentioned just now, be the early adopters, be the testers of the product, to create a strong feedback loop with the core team. Communities are also, I think this is also threaded to the investment side as well. There's a very big phenomenon going on in the Web3 space right now, where VCs are getting kicked off the cap tables of projects. When you unpack this further, it actually makes sense, right? So these VCs, again, just the most notable example is PortalCoin. Right? So last minute, PortalCoin kicked off every VC from the cap table. They replaced them with angels and communities. Maybe the answer is why, right? And then actually the answer is quite simple, I guess, is that in Web2, VCs invest in projects. Their funds actually used to subsidize cost of acquisition. In Web3, it's very different. Projects have direct access to the users. The users are more often not the investors, the contributors, the early adopters, the marketeers. And we are now in a new era of the internet, not just in Web3, but also in Web2, where attention is everything. When Elon Musk actually shouts something, he doesn't just move Web3 tokens. He moves Web2 stock tickers as well. This is why you see there's a very big change in the cap tables of projects right now. I think the most notable one is the one on Mental Path by Jordi Alexander. His cap table is made of 200 people, but 200 KOLs, traders, influencers, no funds, right? Arc is one of them. Gave a big allocation to Arc. Why is that so? Because Arc also can shout on Twitter or do word of mouth marketing. I think community-led growth is something very interesting, plays a very big part here. A lot of companies, even in the Web2 space, they define community-led growth as, instead of spending capital budget on traditional advice, whether it's your billboard advertising, your Google advice, your Facebook advice, take that money instead, incentivize your community. In turn, they become your loyal advocates and market your product for you. What does that really mean, right? It's a shift away from traditional advertising to the holy grail of marketing, which is word of mouth marketing, which is the most efficient form of marketing. So I guess this is what most projects are doing right now, airdrop farming, even though I think a lot of projects are incentivizing for the wrong behavior. I can't wait for a pivotal moment in crypto, which I think is already starting right now, where airdrop farming mechanisms are actually incentivizing for the right behavior, meaning to incentivize for feedback to actually build the product out correctly. I think that airdrop should be used by communities. Airdrop farming should be used by communities at that stage, the period of the airdrop farming. They should be used by the project to actually incentivize for this good behavior, that they can actually build a long and sustainable product in the long term, but also build the correct product that people want, not just to solve the cold start problem of having users on the demand side.
Yeah, I don't know how to beat that.
I mean, you can refute me. I mean,
Dude, we just end the call there, man. I don't need to say anything. I mean, to be like, I think Elroy's great because he can give the TLDR of like where the really emerging trends are. I think, to be honest, on my side of the table, it's more like a bit more like longer term, because we're doing more investment side things. So in all honesty, in all transparency, I'm looking more at quantum computing, mate.
Okay.
In terms of like encryption and cryptography, I won't say it's a new trend coming up, but I would just say that, I mean, it was at Denver recently, and definitely you're seeing the emergence of like DeepIn and AI, and you're seeing all these funny applications come up. But I was just talking to some of my analysts and researchers as well, and we were realizing that actually like a really untouched area yet that would be interesting to explore is quantum. I think we don't see it as a trend in the next like year, but I think given the advancements of quantum computing, with it recently hitting about 1,000 qubits recently, I think it's not too far away. We will start to see, from a, again, pure technology standpoint, the emergence of that trend penetrating from a security perspective, the rest of the space. I think that's something we are looking at. But again, that's like a 10-year plan. For Elroy's was way more better.
I think quantum computing is like, I think it could be a 2025 and beyond, I think. I think this year could be a year of ZK. It will be a year of ZK. Homomorphic encryption maybe this year. AI definitely. I think we'll see a rise of stablecoin payments for AI agents. I think that will be this year as well. You'll see a range of projects. Obviously, DeepIn, because DeepIn for consumer-ready blockchains. I hope to see an ETH blockchain that's already consumer-ready, whether it's like your Solana that started this whole movement. Their slogan, only possible on Solana. But yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for giving your perspective and your thoughts. So I'm just curious, are there any questions from the audience? The floor is all yours, so please feel free to unmute and engage with our speakers. Yeah, Rick Tobacco, it's like floor is yours. You can feel free to unmute and fire away.
Thank you very much. Sorry for joining late. I just got the calendar notification like 10 minutes ago. So I was like, whoa, I don't want to miss this. So correct me if I'm wrong. The guest speakers are based in Singapore?
Yes. I think they're
Awesome.
both based in Singapore, yeah.
So I have a couple questions specific to that jurisdiction. I've been doing a little bit of like market analysis because I come from not quite stable coins in the sense that Tether is kind of like a more of a security token, but more synthetic like DeFi stablecoin like things. So I was just looking at the market size. I see there's XSGD, and that has a very small circulation compared to like the overall crypto market, uh, Singapore. So just some general comments about that, and then if I'll get to my second question.
Joshua, don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you're the expert of this.
Okay, good. Well, number one, StrixX is a private company, so it's by no way a representation of, it's not Singapore's retail domestic stablecoin. Right, that's the first statement that needs to come out of the bat. Right, there is a stablecoin initiative on a wholesale side. I think it'll be released somewhere mid this year, right, from the government officially, but from a retail side, it's not. So definitely StrixX is interesting because they've been trying to capture market share. I think they have some new partnerships they've signed, which is pretty interesting. So I think just keep an eye on that. With regards to scale, I use StrixX to on ramp to some of the different exchanges, but outside of that, that's pretty much the main play. There's not much I can comment after that. But I think definitely from a stablecoin perspective, it's interesting to see different players emerge in Singapore as Singapore tries to grow itself as a crypto hub. And it's encouraging different players, not just StrixX, but other new players such as Circle, for example, to come on board and see how they can work together to actually, become the new hub for Asia, especially.
Mhm.
Did I answer your question? Is there more to that? Sorry.
I guess unless somebody else has a question, I can go ahead and ask my second one if that's okay.
Sure, mate.
Cool, thanks. So in the US, there's this embodiment doctrine, which basically says if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, then it's a duck. And I was wondering if something Singapore specific that is not a bond per se, there's no centralized component, but it behaves like a bond.
Okay.
What kind of regulatory sort of situation would that entail? Does it require a license? Does it not?
Okay, so by no means am I a lawyer. I have to throw the caveat out first, right? So I can just give you an opinion. Please consult a lawyer, right? This is not a financial, nor legal, nor any kind of advice. This is just an opinion of any sort, right? But look, at the end of the day, you have these two perspectives. Look at this, right? One is from a regulatory standpoint, which is what you're asking for. And the other one I would say is more from a product standpoint, right? So on the regulatory side, look, at the end of the day, regulations are there meant to protect individuals, right? And whether you're doing crypto or you're doing any kind of financial asset, there's just a very simple philosophy you can just take away, right? If you're touching retail money, it's dangerous simply because the government will always try to protect the man on the street, and that's fair, right? If you're touching institutional money, you get away with it a lot better. I won't say like I won't say you can go off scot-free, you might get a slap on the wrist, right? And I think I won't say this is like a principle, but I would say in looking at how different court cases played out, not just in Singapore, right? Because it's not just a Singapore, I would say, observation, but it's also across the US, for example. It's a fair statement to say. So I think of that very carefully when you're approaching regulations. From a product perspective, again, I guess the question is if there's a bond that already exists, right, as a financial product, what exact value prop are you providing for providing a in your words, a competitor or substitute that is but not is to potentially bypass some of regulation. If it's only in the interest of higher yield, I guess the question is why Singapore necessarily as a target demographic? Like debatably, you should be targeting the whole DeFi ecosystem, right? If you
Yeah.
wouldn't go down that particular route, because the ROI you're going to get from just targeting one single nation, right, it's not going to be as high as targeting the whole ecosystem, right? So I think you want to think both of those points through when whichever you're building. And again, just to reiterate the regulation point, right, I think very carefully when you're touching retail money, right, because you don't know who's on the other side of that, and even though we all say DYOR, do your own research, etc. Again, depending what rails you use, right, that's going to be tricky, which is why, again, Singapore, as an example, as a country, has banned all kinds of crypto exchange marketing, right, because it's very well aware of the kind of like influence, right, that this has. And I think that's something you want to keep in mind of, especially if you're going to build a startup within, not just in Singapore, in any other kind of ecosystem.
Cool.
Again, not legal advice or financial advice, but yeah.
Yeah, lawyers love to be extra careful because that's how they, get to charge extra hours. So it helps to get a diverse perspective.
No worries.
So yes, do we have any more questions? Anyone else, or like any additional follow-up questions on that? Oh, if not, then I guess thank you so much, Josh and Elroy, for making it down here. I had a lot of fun over the course of this conversation, and I'm really glad we got to do this. And I hope the audience and you both as well, like, also had a great time. But yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just really quick before we all sign off, is there a way we can continue the conversation somewhere else, like Twitter or something?
Yeah, surely. You can drop my Tele handle if you want to get it. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Elroy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.